Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Manny Lagos. Manny, how are we doing today? Bright, sunny day here, Thursday as we record this in Minnesota.
Just gonna start you early. I don't know if it's that bright. It's a nice day. It's a good fall kind of.
It's bright down here in southern Minnesota. I'll say that.
Got it. All right.
Might be a little different up there in Blaine.
Here in the north, Blaine, at our training facility, we got a little bit of cloud cover, but perfect for training. Guys are about to go out here in about 10 minutes. You couldn't ask for better weather. No wind, 50 degrees in November.
This is the most Minnesotan podcast ever that we're starting by basically, let's go to the weather map and talk about.
By the way, this is Jon's podcast.
Like
Jon Marthaler is back.
Yeah. But it's important where they're the celebrities. So if we got to get, if we want people to get engaged, Jon, we got to talk the weather. That's what we love.
You know what we should do? To start the podcast, we should have Sven Sundgaard just give us a weather update, and then people love Sven.
People love Sven. People love Bell, too, by the way. But yeah, people love Sven. Yeah.
I can talk to Sven if you want. Get him on the podcast if you want.
There you go. Let's do that.
I make his weather videos for Bring Me the News. So
perfect.
I do that for you.
If you're going to talk weather, and we're going to have like clever segues, hot Saturday night, you asked me how I was doing. You said beautiful day. It's a beautiful day because of Saturday. One of the best days. Yes. Games, fans, the players, the weather was unbelievable. So doing well.
We've got a lot to discuss in that department. I don't want to get into it now because that'll be the main part of the show. And if we do that, then we'll forget the opening bit of the show other than weather. But let's talk playoff breakdown. I mean, we've got some games, got some series that have wrapped up along with Minnesota United, some series that are going to game threes. Let's start Seattle-Houston. Houston going out on penalty kicks, or going out 2-0 to Seattle. They lose in penalty kicks the first time. Seattle beats them in the second game straight up, I believe. Or did that go to penalty kicks as well? I'm kind of losing track here. Both went
penalties.
To penalty kicks. Both went to penalty kicks. I'm kind of losing track here. But both also had unfortunate red cards for the Houston side. Coco Carrasquilla going out in the first game, and then Hector Herrera spitting at the referee, which is just mind-boggling to do, Manny, in the second game, going out on a red card that way. And that is his last action as a Houston Dynamo, because just announced earlier today they're not extending him and bringing him back. So what a way to go out for Hector Herrera in Houston, Manny.
Yeah, I got a little bit gutted for Ben Olsen, because I think he did a really good job coaching a team that had a lot of injuries, a lot of kind of roster situations that he had to kind of keep their level pretty darn good over the whole year. And then just 2 playoff games where it's not tactical red cards. It's not game-saving kind of like moments. It's literally the discipline of that team lost its mind for 2 games. And playing against a Seattle team that was vulnerable, actually. And really, I think they could have and probably should have taken this to a game 3 to see if Seattle had enough muster at home to get across the finish line. So, and obviously we dealt with our own speeding situation. And I love our fans for their kind of just taking a player out of the game this weekend with their cheering was unbelievable. I mean, they just every moment they could, every time Vera touched the ball. But yeah, I mean, I guess Spitting Gate now is two teams and not just one.
Yeah, it was just a wild way for an incredible career to kind of end in MLS, at least, or in Houston anyways. We don't know what he'll do in the future, but it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. LA Galaxy, who we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show, destroy Colorado 9-1 across both games. Jon, what a mark the Galaxy set down in their first playoff series this year.
Yeah, I everything I said about Vancouver on the last podcast now applies to Colorado. I was wrong about it. I missed it by like 1 team. I had bad things to say about Vancouver. Apparently they're great now, but Colorado, oof, that was rough. That was a rough couple of weeks for them, and they're gonna just remember that they made the playoffs and then try to forget everything that happened after that.
How much
Johnny,
of what we
do you think Cole Bassett? He was missing, right?
Yeah.
I think Bassett was out. Was Mihailovic out the whole time too?
I think he came back for the second game.
Came back for the second one.
But maybe a little bit. Those two, that really hurt them. Obviously, their away form was really poor, so they obviously had to the first bad result, but I was a little. Oh, we had the Zach Steffen moment.
Yeah.
This was kind of the weekend goalie situations. Which one was worse? That could be a good debate right now.
I will say,
Which is worse?
Whoa.
which is worse than what?
Which is the worst gaff?
Well,
I mean,
hitting a guy with clearance and having it rebound somehow, like a pinball thing that it hit a guy and went straight into the net. It's hard to beat that.
yeah,
You guys want some breaking
think
news?
Kazan might have done it.
Yeah.
Oh, we got breaking news, Jonathan?
We've got breaking news from Tom Bogert. Philadelphia Union parting ways with Jim Curtin.
No way. That's not true.
Just came across on Twitter.
Why?
I had that in Bogart's tweet. He says Union feel they need to go in a new direction.
You mean back to the losing?
I don't know. That is a as shocking of an offseason move as I think.
Wait a second. Hold on. Philadelphia was good for like 6 straight years they spent $12 on their squad for 6 consecutive years. What are they hoping to do?
I don't know.
I mean, my first brain goes to like, what teams have job openings?
How dumb do you have to feel if you're San Jose right now that hired Bruce Arena, who got thrown out of the league for being a jerk and apparently has never apologized or anything? And that was like yesterday. They hired Bruce Arena, and now Jim Curtin's on the market.
Is Atlanta still open?
Atlanta's got an interim, but apparently they're going to win MLS Cups. So I think if they do that, they'll probably end up with the interim taking over full time. But
yeah, this is where the show gets tense. Where do we start? I love Jim. That's really surprising.
Yeah.
I think there probably has to be way more to that story. You brought up Bruce, John, so I have a long history with Bruce, and San Jose is really struggling, and Bruce has always figured out a way to make teams better when he's coaching this league. So he rarely doesn't. So it maybe doesn't make sense on paper, but it might make sense in the end because whatever San Jose has been doing for the last 10 years has not made sense. So I'm more in the camp.
What San Jose was missing was verbal abuse. That's the last piece for the Earthquakes.
Well, they take it. LA gives them verbal abuse all the time. So, or even San Francisco. But yeah, that's good news.
Dallas's spot is still open. Isn't Dallas's spot still open? That, considering how Philadelphia kind of built through their academy through Jim Curtin, that feels like a natural fit if you're going to go anywhere. And a team that spends $12 on its roster, as John pointed out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that move shocked me. I felt like the announcement of Bruce Arena coming back, that had been building and kind of growing for a while. So that didn't really shock anybody. But Jim Curtin out in Philadelphia after almost a decade of success, longer. He's been there for 14, 15 years now. He's had an incredible run there. That shocked me a little bit.
Maybe there's more to that story, but that makes no sense whatsoever to me.
Yeah. All right. Back to the playoffs, back to not the breaking news. The other series that wrapped up and finished up, this one also shocked me, considering her transitioning over. New York Red Bulls, Manny, beating Columbus Crew in 2 games. Incredible upset for the Red Bulls here. One that I didn't see coming, but on the podcast last week, if you listened, apparently Khaled called this one.
Oh, I thought you were going to play like a soundbite. Sorry.
I was waiting for a sounder too.
I thought you guys had froze there, but like I was just bringing back.
I thought you were setting up to call us out on.
I thought we were going straight to the. Wow, this podcast is technologically advanced, man.
No, I don't have that technology. No, but Khaled said he called this one. Called New York Red Bulls beating Columbus. I don't know if that was just in game 1 or that was the whole series, but he mentioned on the podcast last week that he called a Red Bulls upset here.
Yeah, I think he was talking more about game 1, but I will say I agree with. First of all, it has to be acknowledged it is one of the biggest upsets in playoff history. You're talking about a team that, from a data analytics standpoint, was playing the best soccer in the entire CONCACAF region. You're talking about playing better than Monterrey, Club America, Inter Miami, and a team that has dealt with a lot of adversity. And it was just where you can talk about the series and our series of RSL didn't lose, but they're out. I just love the best of 3 series. I used to do it as a player, and I think the Red Bulls had 2 great games. and played really well. It wasn't like it was just this smash and grab in either game. Both games they were creating chances. Both games they kind of really stymied the tempo that Columbus would like to play at. And I thought the second game, Columbus had some great chances, but the Red Bulls always were a danger going forward and attacking well. So to me, it was, well done, Red Bulls. They have a great defense. They have a good defense all year. Forsberg had been injured. When he's in, he's a difference maker. And they kind of used that defensive structure and then add in a special player, and anything can happen. And it was a really impressive series by the Red Bulls.
Yeah, I was impressed with what the Red Bulls did, especially in game two, having to fight back and having to kind of hold on to their lead at times and giving up late leads, but then coming back in penalties and the young captain kind of sealing the deal for them, John. It was incredible, incredible display, incredible upset in round one.
It's one of those upsets where I'm like, yeah, I know that Columbus is out, but how do you think they're going to do in the rest of the playoffs? You know what I mean? Like I can't wrap my head around it a little bit to say, well, Columbus is out. Yeah, I know that they're out, but I think I'd still give them a 10% chance of winning MLS Cup somehow. It's one of those kind of upsets.
So they'll find a way back in.
They'll find a way. Wilfred Nancy always finds a way, and I still believe. I believe in the crew.
So Manny, is this
we do have to bring up Christian. I mean, it was
Yes.
amazing goal. Once again, he is like for the last 2 years, super sub, super kind of moment. And I thought that's when Columbus was going to win because he saved them multiple times over the last year and a half with great energy, great goal, great near post flick. But it wasn't meant to be this time. Like I said, the Red Bulls. But it was good to see Christian score such an impactful goal once again in the playoffs for the crew.
So was this just a little too far, a little too much for the Columbus Crew after all the games and all the tournaments and all the play that they've had over the last 2 years? Was this just a little too far and they kind of just petered out, or is this something that the Red Bulls really were able to capitalize on Wilfred Nancy's team? Manny.
I'm going to say it was capitalization. At the end of the day, as good as they are when they play and as good as Wilfred's coaches, there's some flaws within that roster in terms of experience, in terms of level. The last monthish or so, as much as I think Camacho has great moments, but sometimes he makes mistakes, and he did it a lot in Montreal. And you're like, how is Wilfred making him such a better player? Because I've seen the kind of inconsistency, and I've seen Columbus's back line was really well put together, really well coached, but individually it's not like lights out. And so I do feel like the Red Bulls capitalized potentially on a little bit of we all have flaws in our roster, but a little bit of flaw in their roster.
So that sets us up for a potential New York or Hudson River derby. Should New York City FC pull off game three after beating Cincinnati 3-1 in game two? They lost game one, 1-0 a couple weeks ago at this point now. But so that one going to a game three, the first of 4 game threes that we'll see this weekend. John, this one sets up for an exciting one after what we saw New York City do at the weekend, 3-1 over Cincinnati.
Yeah, I saw somebody say that New York City just has to somehow convince its players that this game is being played in New York City, and they'll win 4-0. They're great at home. They're not so great on the road. So all they have to do is just pretend they're in New York. I don't know what the best way to do that is. I don't know if there's a pizza solution or anything like that, but it's as long as they can do that, they'll probably beat Cincinnati again.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they don't start Morales in this game. I mean, for some reason in game one, he didn't start him, and they had no offensive output. They had no flow to the game. Game two, John just said it. It is an unfair advantage at home and Yankee Stadium. I don't think we should rip on it too much because they are building their own stadium for 2027, which will be one of the best, I think, experiences for soccer in the league. But I will tell you that if it becomes a New York series, there is a part of me that loves, and I shouldn't say this because it's got that, it's on that fringe of maybe becoming violent, which I don't support and don't like, but it's one of the few kind of situations we don't have a lot in our country where we have fan bases that are clashing the way those two do clash. It's kind of cool. It would be exciting for a playoff series to have that kind of tension.
Yeah, and considering New York City would host that one because they're the higher seed, that would be an incredible turnaround for them. And beating Cincinnati would be an incredible first round win for them. Another game that kind of surprised me.
Are you predicting they're going to beat them?
I think they will. I think I'm going to call it. We forgot to do that. Predict the other series as well. Let's start that here. What do you guys think? I'm thinking New York City win that one and move on and host New York Red Bulls in the semifinals. John?
I think Cincinnati will win that one. It's not a home game for New York City.
Manny?
I'm going Cincinnati as well, but I actually like the drama if we have the Subway Series.
Yeah. I'm just wanting the chaos and the drama. That's all I'm rooting for at this point.
What-
Another game.
What's the train that goes out to Harrison? Is that a path
Pathway.
train?
That's the path. Yeah.
The path train series.
Yeah, the path.
Subway plus path train.
Yeah, you got to do both. You got to take the subway to the path.
A-line/path train.
I'll just have a note. I didn't rename the Hudson River Derby this time like I'm trying to rename the El Trafico. This was John renaming the Hudson River Derby on
I
John's
like
podcast.
Subway series. I like the consistency of that. I just don't think it's possible to take the. I don't know. I'm not a New York City.
Yeah,
fan
I'll let it, the path is both a train and a subway. It has both elements. It's in New York. It's in a subway. Then it comes out up above, almost like an L train. So it's going to be a little bit of both. But
there you go. It can still be the Subway series. Yeah. This is the transportation modes talk that people are looking for when they come to this podcast.
We've got it all on the match day preview. We don't just talk and preview matches and review matches. We talk weather. We talk before the show. John and I were talking old technologies.
That's right.
And baseball for some reason.
Yep.
Now we're talking transportation. We've got it all here. Don't go anywhere else for any other podcast.
And we'll definitely talk more weather, so don't worry.
It'll come up.
A lot of weather talk still to come.
Don't worry. We can't stay on task. It's fine, people.
We'll talk about goalkeepers because Christian Kalina had himself an absolute performance in game 2 against Orlando, helping them win in penalty kicks this time, making that a game 3. Your guys' thoughts on that one? Christian Kalina standing on his head, John, and once again, I know the votes are already in. I don't think it's been announced yet, but he's clearly making a case to be goalkeeper of the year.
He's going to win goalkeeper of the year.
Yeah, he should.
I'm fairly confident in that. By the way, we didn't mention Robin Lod not winning comeback player of the year, which we can yell about later. But
we'll do that for sure.
I think my greatest hope for this series is that Charlotte ends up winning it without scoring a goal, because I think that's a hilarious way to possibly go through in a playoff series. And now I know that it's a pretty normal thing for a 0-0 draw to end up in penalty kicks, but just in a best of 3 game series to go through without scoring a goal, that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping for in that series, because I'm so badly hoping for Charlotte to go through without scoring a goal.
So that is your prediction, is that Charlotte win on penalties?
Yep. I'm predicting with my heart on that one, because that's what I want.
Manny?
Orlando. I really enjoyed watching. I didn't watch the game, and I didn't even watch kind of the highlights, but I did get some of the feed of how excited the city was winning that game and taking to game 3. It was another example of we can tease about how MLS tries to create playoffs, but we also are challenged with the international break. We also are trying to get every team that makes a playoff a home game. And great series, great drama, great fan support so far. I mean, I've been glued to the TV for these first couple games, and they've been all outstanding. We haven't gotten to our game yet, so there's some parts of the playoffs I love. And I always say we should put our chests out no matter what, because we do playoffs better than anybody in the world. It's what we've been doing in all our sports forever. So even if you have criticized them, we still do them better than the rest of the world. And like I said, I was really happy to see Charlotte's fan base go nuts to get that 3rd game. But I think that Orlando's going to come back well. I mean, they've got a good team now.
Yeah, I think I'm picking Orlando in this one to win. Maybe in penalty kicks, we'll see. But I think I'm picking Orlando to move on. Both number 1 seeds in each conference. Unable to get the job done in 2 games, both of them being forced to a game 3. LAFC and Vancouver moving down to a game 3 after Vancouver just routed LAFC 3-0. And then Atlanta pulling back a 2-1 win after losing 2-1 in the first game. Which one of these series surprises you most that it's going to 3 games? I'll start with you, Manny, then John.
I would say the Atlanta Miami is it's the most surprising for sure, but it's also, maybe Atlanta's the only team that's really kind of actually has Miami's number a little bit more than other teams. And what an exciting finish, by the way. That was awesome. The game got so wide open at the end, and both teams had a chance to win. And, as a soccer fan, knowing that you score that kind of goal in that kind of moment in front of 70,000 people, it's pretty iconic, and it's pretty cool for American soccer to have that many people, kind of in that moment. So I would probably go with that is more surprising for me.
John?
Well, given all of the horrible things I said about the Vancouver Whitecaps, it'd be hard for me to not say that I'm surprised that not only are they still in the playoffs, but they beat LAFC. But I mean, how many points separated Atlanta and Miami in the final standings? 35, something like that? And Miami had almost double the number of points. It really was the exact same feeling. Atlanta beating Miami in the playoffs was the exact same feeling of like you're watching a random FA Cup game and a third division team beats a Premier League team somehow. Where you're like, wow, this is an amazing thing. What an upset. And there's 70,000 people there and it's Atlanta, but it still had that same feeling to it. So it's the magic of the MLS Cup, I guess.
Who has which lower seed has a better chance to go through? Is it Vancouver or is it Atlanta? I know, Manny, you said Atlanta kind of has Miami's number better than anyone in this league.
But no. When you phrase the question that way, both my personal side, because Vancouver's a lower seed than us, but also no, they played two pretty darn good games against LAFC, and they really played well at home, and that was a fair 3-0 result. So
yeah,
there's no doubt LAFC has to be aware that Vancouver is really playing good soccer, looks good. I think Atlanta could sneak the win somehow because it's a 3-game series and anything can happen. But I think on paper, Vancouver has to feel really good about their chances of getting a win on the road.
John?
I think I would have to pick Vancouver too. They suddenly flipped the switch when they got to the playoffs. They were terrible coming down the stretch, and then they went to Portland, and playing a home game in Portland cured them of everything. Somehow that was the secret to. They just needed to not play their home game at home, and it reset the franchise. They absolutely destroyed Portland, and getting on top of LAFC early is a great way to get ahead of LAFC, and that seems more likely to me than Apple TV allowing Miami to lose in the first round of the playoffs.
So what you're saying, John, is that by just denying your home opener, but basically you're saying you can flip your entire franchise fortunes.
That's right.
By saying we are not going to play at home. Thank you though, and we're going to go on the road. I like it. It works.
I don't know what the breaking news says, but I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia Union's playing every game on the road next season. That's going to be their next announcement.
That's it.
They're going to fire one of the best coaches in the league, and oh, by the way, no more home games.
First team in history, all games on the road.
All of our home games are taking place in Nicaragua this year. That's our home stadium. Good luck, everybody.
How about that place in Bolivia, by the way? Have you guys read about that?
What?
So they were playing the qualifiers at La Paz, which is 10,000. I don't even know the name of the other city. They went up to 13,425 feet for the qualifiers. Yeah, that's for Bolivia. Because if you look, they've done all right at home, and you're like, okay, La Paz, get it. And they're like, oh wait, because their national team's not very good right now. But at home, obviously, they're beating Colombia, who has lost in 34 games, 13,400 feet. I don't know how you play. I just.
Why not just make that your home stadium then?
Yeah, that's what John. You brought it up. Let's just this nice flight to Bolivia.
Yeah,
3,000 feet.
I like Bolivia's attitude here. What should we invest in development? How should we develop better players? Or we could move our stadium to the top of the mountain. I like it. Here we go.
Well, they're kind of doing both. Just the hilarious thing is they can't play the old guys. They have all these young 18 to 21-year-olds just running around. So there is some development model there as well. They're basically playing the guys that can actually withstand the air.
Whoever was in charge of putting a U.S. home game in St. Paul in February is also in charge of the Bolivian Soccer Federation right now.
I think you're right. I think they're both one of the same.
What if it was fun when it was cold? What if we played this in the tundra? How about Fairbanks? Can Fairbanks host a qualifier? What are they doing these days?
I'm sure they've got a stadium there. All right, now we're getting off track again. Now we're talking about Bolivian national team soccer home game scheduling. Are you ready to take your Loons fandom to the next level? Join Minnesota United's official season ticket waitlist, The Preserve, for just $25 to get early access to tickets and first shot at securing available season tickets in 2026. Visit MNUFC.com/tickets/preserve to become a member today. Before we move on to Robin Lod snub, let's get your actual predictions for these game threes between LAFC and Vancouver and Atlanta and Miami. Manny, I'll start with you.
I'm gonna go with Atlanta, and I'm gonna go with my heart for the Minnesota United's sake. I'm gonna go with Vancouver.
John?
I'm gonna go with Miami and LAFC. Picking against the best team in each conference seems. I got burned. I got burned by picking against Vancouver, and now I want to do the most likely thing.
I'm going pure chaos. I'm going
Pure
Vancouver and
chaos.
Atlanta.
I like it.
Atlanta.
Chaos.
I just
ball.
want the chaos ball. I want MLS's playoffs just to be thrown up in the air and have the top two seeds in each conference go out in the first round and have all the narratives come out of that. It would be absolutely hilarious and awesome to watch and see what breaks down from there on out. It would be incredible to see that. Top three seeds if you're including Columbus going out in the first round as well. I mean, that would be a wild first round for sure. So let's jump into this. Robin Lod did not get the comeback player of the year. I know all of us on this podcast clearly thought he was deserving of it. Lewis Morgan wins it. There's certainly some narratives there, but your thoughts on Robin Lod not getting this award, man? I see you giving me questioning look here.
No, I felt like I got educated here because I wasn't quite sure of the rules, and you guys had convinced me this should have been a no-brainer. I mean I'm his qualities again Saturday night, and we'll talk about the game, but just the run, the pass, just like he's so versatile now. He's been in the league, it's one of those ones where I'm a little bit perplexed at sometimes how we get overlooked.
John?
I mean, I think it's hard, a little bit hard for a guy like Robin Lod, not only because he plays in Minnesota and not the major market in New York. So I think people are more drawn to a story they know something about, and Lewis Morgan, he had an injury, and most people, I'm guessing a lot of the voters were like, was Robin Lod hurt last year? I can't remember whether Robin Lod why is he a comeback player of the year? And if you ask him, if you had said, was it difficult to come back from the injury? He would say something like, it was fine. Like that's all he would ever, he wouldn't be like, let me take you inside this horrible rehab.
Yeah.
He would just be like, oh, it's a little difficult. Okay, well, it's hard to tell a story with a guy that taciturn, you know what I mean?
It's a very Minnesotan answer, by the way.
No Finnish guy will ever win comeback player of the year
Wow.
because you would have to share your struggle, and that's just not happening.
We should have known that when we talked about this. We should have told our audience that unfortunately Finnish players cannot win this award, but they're nominated.
They're too humble. They won't stump for themselves to get the award that they clearly very much deserve. Let's talk about this playoff series then. Minnesota win 2-0 through penalty kicks, score 1 goal in both of those games, and we'll talk about that as well. But just general thoughts from this series and your takeaways and what it says for the run that they could possibly go on in the playoffs, Manny.
I mean, I'll start with it's fascinating that we got through the tangent of our weather and technology and your air capacity and oxygen level. But at the end of the day, this is really one of the highlights of a show when you get to talk about a playoff win in MLS in front of fans for the first time ever. And nothing disappointed the night in terms of the stadium and the presentation. The player drama on the field was through the roof. The fans were amazing. I mean, I have like little moments of just thinking about how good sometimes our fans are. And one of my favorite things was about when stoppage time came up with 10 minutes to go. In general, when you're the home team, it's a big roar of, come on, we can get this. And ours was kind of like, yay, but we're not playing that well, which I loved because it was real. It was actually authentic. And our fans are insanely authentic group of fans that support the team, but also, are honest when we're not playing well. They have little moments where they might need us. And then I think I mentioned before the stuff with Vera and just the ability for the entire stadium to engage in that kind of moment and that kind of process, I loved. So long story short, insane night, super special, historic. I was so happy and proud the stadium and the fans and the team all kind of connected to get the result.
Jon?
Uh, I I think the funny, and I said this to someone else, the funny thing about the playoff game experience for me is that I think everyone in the stadium enjoyed it, except for the two of us that were there that had a Saturday night newspaper deadline. So there were two people that really struggled with that excitement in the penalty shootout. And there was so much stuff like Dane St. Clair and the whole it's over thing. Missed that totally because my head was down and I was trying to get a story ready to file as soon as the thing was over. So I'm the wrong person to ask. There's two of us that really, really had a tough time on Saturday night, and I'm one of them.
Yeah. I thought, okay, Manny, you mentioned the atmosphere, and I think this was a huge part of the game because that was, for me, the loudest I've ever heard Allianz Field from minute 1 to minute 90. As soon as the Rockets were shot off during the national anthem, that place erupted and it stayed that way. It felt like throughout much of that match. There may have been dips when, as you said, Manny, the team wasn't playing that well later on in the match, but overall, especially after the Songbin Jung conversion on the penalty kick, obviously. But throughout that match, it felt like that place was just amped to a degree that I don't think I've ever felt at Allianz Field in the years that that place has been open that I've been attending games there.
Yeah, I think it was so good that people will want to tell people around the Twin Cities that I was at that game.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's a great sign for the team because it's that good of an experience. It's like 87 Kirby puck and hit home run kind of talk. You're talking about being at something that just is special, feels special, becomes special. And certainly I started with, like the atmosphere and that, but then the drama of the game was through the roof. Like I said, this is the playoffs. It's not perfect. We didn't win 3-0. We had great first half and then a great goal, and then we struggled and had to power our way through how to solve RSL, who fought back into the game. And so I just love the drama being there's flaws in the game, and that led to more human drama, especially particularly Dane Sinclair, who gave us the best drama. By the way, somebody told me yesterday, I think it was either Vince Carter's birthday or when he was
He's
talking
getting
about
his,
his number.
Yeah, he's getting his jersey retired, I
yeah.
believe, in Toronto.
Yeah, I just love that little connection there too. From Toronto, throwing out that kind of moxie. We need that in Minnesota a little more. We need a little bit of that, kind of let's get going here.
Yeah. Dane St. Clair pulling off you can't really say the word on the podcast, but the bleep housery in net as the opposition was preparing for a penalty kick. You love to see that. So Jon, you're just laughing over there.
It was like he was like cleaning. He like got a lawnmower out and he was mowing part of the field. And no, hold on, I gotta aerate. I gotta aerate over by this post, and then we can get started on the penalty shootout. Like, what are you doing?
That was pure goalkeeper magic that we've
Yep.
seen, especially Emiliano Martinez for Aston Villa or Argentina over the years pull off.
We're not quite at
dove
Emi
into his bag.
Martinez level, but we're approaching that.
I mean, he could have saved all four, to be honest. And by the way, I'm one of the few people who are like, I count misses as saves. So, I get into debates about this all the time. I do not like them not. No, the goalie, stood up and made you miss the frame. So I'm a big fan of if you miss the goal, the goalie made the save.
I want to talk about the penalty kicks in a second, but obviously let's get through the match first. Manny, for you, both lineups were the same for Minnesota. It's been that way for 3 games in a row now. What was the tactical shifts that you noticed from game 1 to game 2 for Minnesota? Obviously, it felt like Real Salt Lake just weren't able to press the same way they did in game 1. Minnesota came out a little bit more aggressive, it felt like, in game 2. What were the tactical shifts that Eric Ramsey made in game 2 that you noticed early on in that evening?
Yeah, I think if you noticed that the higher line was definitely evident. The first half we were definitely saying, "Hey, try to beat us over the top." We're gonna now get more numbers, a little bit more than the middle offensive third. If you look tactically Robin Lode was a little bit more inside as opposed to he got caught being wide, a little bit more like a right forward. And it's not really where he wants him. He wants him and Pereira kind of in the middle more. So I thought, he, particularly in the first half, found nicer pockets in the middle. So I think those were the two kind of biggest things I noticed. And then it just also opened up Pereira and Lode to create space and create chances. It was, like I said, it was a really good first half. I thought we got on the front foot. I thought we created good chances. We limited them really going forward. And I was expecting that to lead into even a better second half. I didn't quite get there after the goal, but it did lead to the goal. I was not surprised we scored first based on how well we played in that first half.
We've talked about kind of the drama and atmosphere of the night, and that was most evident at one point in the 54th minute, as you mentioned, Manny, the goal for Minnesota United, Josef Rosales scoring it, as we found out on the broadcast earlier in the night from Zarek Valentin, telling us that Josef Rosales had a kid that morning. What a day for him to start off the day having a child and then end the day scoring the opening goal in a playoff game that you could move on and you could advance to, John. Just an incredible day for Josef Rosales, and he played an excellent game, highlighted by that goal he scored in the 54th minute.
Yeah, I mean, so I was at training yesterday and Eric Ramsey gave Josef Rosales the day off yesterday, and nobody has ever needed an extra day off more than a guy who had their first child and also played a 90-minute soccer game plus penalty kicks. What kind of life must that be? I can't even fathom it. I said on social media the night my first was born, I don't think I even ate dinner.
Yep.
I couldn't do anything for weeks afterwards. It's unbelievable to me that anybody can compartmentalize, and that must be the athlete mindset to just be able to compartmentalize to have those two things separate because it seems utterly impossible to me.
I couldn't sleep the first night my kid was born because I was afraid of every noise he made. Like, oh, what's going on? And he just went out there and played one of his better games of the season, Manny.
He has had a great year. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is relevation, just outside back, wing back. I mean, I still think even next year he's going to have more goals and assists because he's still growing into this position. But I mean, he is up there as one of the best in the league. And to see him kind of score a goal and kind of help us push to get the win. And then you find out he has a kid. It's just, again, we talk about perfect night. I'm sure for him, it must feel even better to have all that kind of contribution and a life changing event.
Yeah, absolutely incredible night for him, game for him. Who else stood out for you guys in that match on Saturday night? I know there was quite a few standout performances, but who were the standouts for you, John?
I thought Ioane was lined up. Minnesota was not only pushing him high, but especially from like goal kicks. They did a lot of not building out of the back and just going long from the goalkeeper and Longwane and Yaboa and pushing Carlos Harvey up there as well. I honestly think over the series, Harvey is a standout too, just in the sense that one of Minnesota's best offensive weapons is Carlos Harvey pushing on the overlap and overlapping down that right hand side. Even as you've got Longwane up front, they're pushing forward and feeling free enough to do that with the guys who are manning the back line as well. So I thought that was sort of the interesting tactical part of just how much they went with that right hand
We
side.
talked about the development of Josef Rosales, Manny, but the development of Carlos Harvey coming up from Phoenix Rising last year, having a great year for them, and then being one of the signings, the offseason signings that kind of just maybe got overlooked early on in the season, but he's really developed into essentially a must start at that right center back role late on in this season and has really developed in that role for him.
Oh, he's been outstanding. I mean, again, I think John is spot on two levels. One, there was a little more direct and not trying to play out the back and try to win battle of second balls. And definitely Bongi got pushed higher up. And, it's kind of cool because every game Carlos is getting a little bit more of a green light to say, go, go. And he's like, yes, please. I used to be a midfielder. I love being up here. I love doing that. And he's got a little kind of cleverness with the ball when he gets up there. So he's really, he's still growing into what it is to be a right center back. But he also now, Eric's like, I kind of like where you used to be too. So go up and do that as well, which is kind of cool. And he's had an outstanding series. I did think in RSL he was our best player. Great and steady this game. I give credit to the back three in general. I thought that first half, once again, RSL had no ideas about how to break us down. They did a much better job in the second half, but Boxall, Diaz, and Harvey have been a great tandem right now. They really have. And I think the goal of the team and the club and the group is to continue to get that kind of tandem and maybe the wingbacks of Joseph Bongi to be even higher. I think eventually the goal is we can have them be real true wingback to wingers type of play. But right now they're giving us the great two-way play. So back to Carlos, great two-game series. Excited for him now because all of our defenders are going to have to be really hungry against the Galaxy because it's a little bit different level now in terms of offensive ability of the team we're playing.
Sticking with this game just a little bit longer, when the lineups came out, guys, were you surprised that Chicho Arango, despite his goal scoring drought that he's been on, which has been absolutely epic at this point, what is it now, 15 games? They have to wait till next season, hasn't scored a goal since July. His XG, his personal XG has been down as well. Were you guys surprised that he wasn't in the starting lineup when Real Salt Lake announced it on Saturday, John?
Well, I was surprised just in the sense of that's a tough call to make when you're a coach of taking your biggest name attacker and thinking, you know what? He's going to be I think he'll be good off the bench in the second half. That's one of those things that you look and that takes some guts to do as a coach. So I was surprised by that just from that standpoint of the coach having the confidence to do that.
Yeah, it changed up the way they played with Anderson Julio a little bit faster. It seemed like they played a little bit more direct, Manny. But again, just a surprising and big time call on the brink of elimination for Pablo Mastroeni.
Yeah, I actually remember talking to Eric a little bit about the thoughts on what we would think or not think they would do based on how we played in Tuesday, and we're up a goal, or sorry, up a game in the series. We weren't surprised. I mean, I think they had to do something. That now had been two games in a row at home where they really didn't create any chances. And so I think, a guy who hadn't scored in 14 games and also like trying to navigate, can we get more speed in behind? Can we try to, kind of deal with our athletic defenders? Yeah, at the end of the day, big call, but I wasn't surprised. They had to do something. And I actually think it helped. I think they were a little bit better. They were a little more direct. That they did limit us, even though we played so well in the first half. Probably as well as we played, we would have had a few more chances if they weren't quite as sharp to deal with our home energy as well. So fascinating storylines there, no doubt about it. That's what coaches are paid for, those big decisions.
Another standout for me. Obviously, we already mentioned him. Dane St. Clair during the penalty kicks came up with a couple more big saves throughout the match. He had himself a series. Zach McMath had himself a series, 11 saves total in the two matches during regulation. Big games for the goalkeepers, but Dane St. Clair coming up big, playing the mind games, pointing to the spot where Diogo Gonçalves was going to take the shot and came up big and stopped it. Then stopped Diego Luna's shot a couple shots later, forced Matty Crooks to go over the bar on his kick right into the wonder wall. Dane St. Clair deserves a lot of credit for the way he played in that two-game series, John.
I'm laughing because after the game, he was yelling at Matt Crooks and
he was going crazy. That was hilarious to see.
Someone asked him, "What were you yelling?" And he said, I didn't know what he was going to do, so I was just yelling his name." And I was like, that's the most annoying thing I can think of. Just you're about to take a penalty and someone's like, Matt. Just that's little. I don't. Does Dane St. Clair have an older brother? Because that's little brother stuff right there.
That is definitely little brother energy right there.
It's just unbelievable. So annoying.
In a good way. Like
Yes.
that is the energy of somebody that was in a zone that was based off of, like, you're right. McMath had a great series. I was really impressed with his play. But once the PKs started, even in Salt Lake, and then the extension to the Twin Cities and St. Paul State and Allianz Field, Dane was on fire. I mean, you could just feel it just getting bigger and more. And every kick, he got more confident about the just being bigger. And I'm going to save everything. I still think he almost had Arango's too. So I love hearing the story about him doing that because I think that's where his brain was. It was in like every save I make, I'm just going to get stronger and stronger.
So before we move on, final thoughts on this one and what you think, how you think it helps the Loons through this playoffs and what they can build off of it to go on a run here, John.
Well, I mean, I think we should ask Manny about going on a playoff run because I was remembering as we were getting ready for this podcast, I was remembering a million years ago writing about the Manny Lagos playoff magic from 2011, 2012 back. I think Manny will say they were not the best two teams in the league either of those years, but they won one title and almost won another. So, Manny, what goes into getting a lower seed, an underdog to make a playoff run? You have the expertise here.
I hope there's a compliment in there somewhere.
There was a compliment in there.
No, I think we have some good time to talk about the break here and how that Eric can recalibrate and really game plan Galaxy. But what he has going for him right now is he's got a group that is really hungry and united to um, play tough, hard-nosed defense and really combine that, I think, with, going forward at the right times so we don't lose our shape, which I think is going to be a secret sauce against the Galaxy in terms of dealing with their kind of high offense. So I do think if you can stop their offense, I think they become very quickly potentially vulnerable in terms of how they play. So the answer for me is just I do see some similarities in terms of this group and the unity and the kind of togetherness combined with that. That's not enough. You actually have to perform, the game plan on the field. You have to have good enough players to perform it and be hungry to do it both individually and collectively. And so there are, you're right, some similarities. So we're in a good spot here where I do think it's going to be an exciting game in Galaxy just because of when I look back at those runs, it didn't happen overnight. There was a buildup of a group throughout the season that was getting hungry to play together in the playoffs. And we all can feel that. And I think the podcast, we've talked about that prior to the playoffs going into it, how well we had kind of our senses of seeing what Eric had been doing with this group. And now to see it come to true in the high moments of stress has been really cool. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I hope it's a true run like we've had in the past.
Let me ask you this, having been through sort of that experience, as a coach, is there something you can do to sort of build that mentality with the team, or is it really about we have the kind of players when you're a coach, you say our team has the kind of players that have that mentality that can do this?
Yeah, no, I think I mean, I would say there are definitely things you have to do, and it's really interesting. You obsessively have to think about all the little things, and so that sometimes means how your training cycle for the week is going to go. And now 3 weeks, frankly, which is insane. These guys have to work really hard to think about every single little detail for the next 3 weeks in terms of how do we train, how do they kind of deal with the players going international break, how do they deal with their fitness, how do they deal with like the tactical stuff you just said there, while trying to keep it lighthearted and keep the vibes going that, the players don't feel all of that kind of thinking and all that obsession that the coaches have to go through and kind of combine the two. So my answer would be it's a weird one where you want to keep the players relaxed, but they also have to be focused and intense. And then there is going to be tactical planning that has to come into play where they have to kind of in a weird way, they might have more time than usual with the couple of weeks to work on the execution of everything. And like I said, this one isn't a fascinating preparation because you do have a very high-powered offensive team you're going to play against, and that goes well right now with how we're playing defensively. But that doesn't mean that we might not have some tactical twists going into the game against the Galaxy just to make sure Eric thinks is the best way to win the game. So long story short, yes, all of that is there and then some. But that's why the coaches get paid big bucks because that's a big challenge to manage that balance of relaxed but also focused and intense.
I don't want to bring down the podcast and be negative. The team could work on, go and get ready for against the Galaxy. And there are things that might need to be fixed. And one of those, I don't know how much it concerns you, but we talked about Chicho Arango's goalless drought. Unfortunately, we have one of our own in Kelvin Yeboah, 370 minutes, 5 games without a goal. Does that concern you going into this Galaxy series? Or because of the way the Galaxy kind of shipped goals a lot throughout their matches, they didn't do much against a depleted Colorado side, but they've only got 2 clean sheets since the Leagues Cup or return from Leagues Cup. So their defense has been shaky. We know that about them. Does that concern you, or does that give you a little bit of hope that he's going up against a defense that isn't maybe as strong as Real?
No, it doesn't. I think Calvin, can't always score. We scored 4 goals. So I don't think there. I will say the game on Saturday, our play after we scored, I think has to be sharper. And so the balance of how deep in a block we sit. If we're sitting deep in a block to win the ball and then counter and then win the ball and keep the ball higher up the field, I love. But if we sit too deep in the block when we have a lead and we don't get possession and we kind of start to just really allow the other team to start having momentum of attacks, I think that is where I want maybe to say, okay, Calvin, how can you help us push out and get our lines higher and then start winning the ball higher up the field? So it's a little bit more that area I'd be concerned for Calvin. If like there was about a 15, 20-minute period there where I thought we were just not quite ourselves defensively. And I don't think we can afford to play that way against the Galaxy.
Jon?
I think this is interesting, tactically speaking, in the sense that Minnesota's proved they can win a game 1-0. They've proved they can win a classic road game in MLS of having 22% of the ball and getting a couple of goals on the counterattack. Can they, if it gets into it, I mean, obviously, if they can hold the Galaxy off the board, this is all a moot point, but can they win a 3-2 game? Can they win a 4-3 game? Can they win a game in which they have to have the ball for a while and keep it away from a while? Because we all know that the Galaxy 2,000 passes in a game and just hold the ball for the entire thing. Can they win a different way, or do they have to just lean into the strengths they have of saying they're going to try to win this 1-1, 1-1 in a penalty shootout, whatever it looks like?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. How do you think these two teams match up? LA Galaxy, Minnesota United. We don't know when that game is, still to be decided after the series of game threes coming up this weekend. We'll figure that out and get that information to you. But how do you think these two teams match up, Manny?
Oddly enough, I like the matchup because I think and we're more than good defense. I think we're a really balanced team where we can play both sides of the ball, we can create chances. But the Galaxy's offense has been really good this year. And I also think we can get them wide open and stretched if we can limit their chances. Because I think they do tend to start to lose a little bit of their shape defensively when they press for chances or try to create chances or try to make chances. And so I really like the matchup. I like the where we are with our defensive shape and our defensive balance. And I like, frankly, where we are offensively. Even though we've only scored one goal in the last two games, I like how the defense has, built into our offensive balance. So long story short, I think it's a great matchup. I think it'll be a fascinating one for us, for the fans. I mean, I think it's winnable. There's no doubt about it. I think, when Jon brought up the run, I think it's because people feel something. There's something special about this group, and I really believe that.
Yeah, it feels like they're very much informed despite only scoring the one goal over the last two matches. Jon, your thoughts on how they match up? And I guess for me, the next question is, who do you think this 3-week break benefits more, us or Minnesota United or Los Angeles Galaxy, if it benefits anybody?
This 3-week break benefits nobody. It benefits absolutely nobody that's involved. No players, coaches, fans, media, TV partners. None of the involved people are benefited by this. And all I can say is that MLS still has an opportunity to look next year. The FIFA calendar is out now. They can plan the schedule next year, no problem, to avoid this kind of thing. It's out through 2030. They want to work on the 2030 schedule. They can do that as well. This is not a surprise. This is not MLS going, we looked and it turns out there's an international break in November. Who knew? I guess we can't have any playoff games. This is the way they planned it, and it's idiotic. It's just foolishness because there's nothing is helped by this. Minnesota, by the time the next 3 weeks roll around, people are going to forget. The funny part is, I was talking to somebody on Saturday, and I said, "Well, this is the last Allianz Field game of the year." And they, "Oh, wait a second, what if Vancouver wins? What about the East Coast?" And I kind of laughed. It's all setting up that way right now. Vancouver's still in it. Every lower seed in the Eastern Conference.
Let's go.
December 7th, MLS Cup at Allianz Field. I'm sure that the weather will cooperate perfectly. I can't think of anything that could go wrong there. But
who doesn't want Atlanta, Minnesota in a snowstorm for the MLS Cup final?
Yeah, they're like the first MLS Cup final, the one that took place in a hurricane or whatever. It's going to be that, but with snow.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. I will, in defense of the mothership MLS, it's a little bit more complicated than Jon.
Stop it.
I personally would like FIFA to slow down in 3 straight windows in September, October, November that really kind of hamper the challenges of high level soccer, and the clubs, by the way, pay the salaries. So this is, even more interesting, and how we create the playoff schedule. And obviously, there's been some rumors about talking about flipping the seasons and talking about how to figure out, is there a better time within the calendar year to have playoffs? This is why this is all being discussed, because it is very hard for such an awesome storylines to be relevant when you have these big breaks, and when you have an audience that has a lot of sports right now in their calendars besides soccer in this country, is why the big discussions are happening, because this is great drama, this is great stuff, but it's hard to keep it going when you got these international breaks.
I guess for me, I just don't understand why the game three couldn't been on Wednesday. You force a quick turnaround. You shouldn't be benefiting from a game three, because arguably, if you're going to game three, you have that game and you only have a 2 week break between your next game instead of a 3 week break. I feel like that's actually more of an advantage.
Sure.
So I don't understand why you couldn't have had game three on Wednesday and then play the conference semifinals this weekend and punish those
Yeah.
teams that went to a game three and make it more of a detriment for being forced to a game three. I don't know. That's just me speaking.
No, I think you're right. And if I could give some insight, I think there's a pushback on the data analytics world of injury prevention.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
what happens here is that it's just like the NBA minutes, they're going through the same thing. It is a little bit like, well, they got to go on the national break, and then we want to have the games so they can recover and play again, and we don't want guys to be injured. So I think a lot of the reason why has been injury prevention, but it's a 3 weeks for a best of three series is a long time. That really is.
Yeah, really is. All right, back to LA Galaxy and Minnesota before we get ourselves maybe into more trouble with some other
I want
stuff.
to take a moment to say hello to the Apple TV people that are standing behind Manny's camera, holding a club and just, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry what I said. Don't come to my house.
You're good. Trust me. There's no right or wrong answer to it. I think more debate is good in this situation. I have more people that learn about the challenges of all this. Because the moment you think we have it, like I just brought up, Jonathan, then another group says, we're a little bit worried about minutes for players and management and load management and recovery. So all the above. Good debate, though. Good debate.
It's a tricky balance for sure.
I want as many people yelling as possible. That's what I'm here for.
John's here for the chaos.
I'm here for chaos. I'm here for anger and yelling.
All right. LA Galaxy, 9 goals in their 2 games against Colorado. Do we think that was kind of their offense coming alive at the right time, or was that just them capitalizing on a bad Colorado team that was very injury depleted, John?
I mean, this is what the Galaxy can do. You look at their front 5, front 6, and you go, yeah, this can happen. And Colorado obviously did not come into that series on a good run. They had injury problems. It was a little bit of a perfect storm for everything to go wrong for the Rapids, which we talked about Zach Steffen punting a ball off a guy and having it go in the net. And that was just sort of it was a little microcosm, one little highlight that summed up the whole playoff series for Colorado of there's no possible way this could go wrong, but here we are, and the ball's in the net. So the Galaxy have an amazing attack, and I think that is going to be the story of the Minnesota-LA series, is how the Galaxy offense matches up with the Minnesota defense.
You always love those offensive versus defensive stand-up matches. Looking forward to that. Speaking of that Galaxy attack, Ricky Puig, Gabriel Peck, Dejan Jovelic, all 17 goals on the season, including playoffs. Joseph Paintsel, 11 goals on the season. They've got attackers coming out of the gills, Manny. That's a lot of weapons that the Loons defense has to close down. What's the best way to go about closing down all of those weapons and not allowing Galaxy to have too many chances?
Yeah, we got Royce in there as well, who's I think really done well. So it's
oh, by the way, they have Marco Royce in there. No, no big deal.
I'll just casually say that, to the group. I like I said, the one thing I would say is the defensive structure we have could really frustrate them, and really I think the game planning around that is not letting them break our lines. And so it's really, to me, more about they have such good passers that like to play forward that if you can limit their way to play forward, I think that they can get a little frustrated and then go into spaces in the field where then you can counterattack and really hurt them, and they have to be defending a lot more. And ironically, we might have the ball a lot more because they might kind of get out of that shape. So I think the key is obviously for us to even play the way we've been playing, but even better. Like we've got a couple weeks here, and I know we're going to have guys missing a national break, but to get really excited about those defensive principles and deciding when we defend the back five versus back three, and winning the center midfield, and winning your one-on-one battles so that they don't have their good players on the ball in good spots. If their players, like, I really think there's been times this year when Ricky Puig has had to go back to the back line and get the ball, and he's really stayed out of those dangerous areas. That's where we want him. Our goal is to really kind of, not allow them to get a tempo that really hurts us. And really, that starts with our defensive shape. I mean, it really will come down to that. And we've been great, by the way. We've been one of the best teams in the league in the last 2 or 3 months with our defensive shape. I'd say we're better than anybody, to be honest.
Yeah, should be an exciting one in 2.5 weeks' time. At this point, looking forward to that. Out in Carson, California, at LA Galaxy. Looking forward to a conference semifinals match. Before we get the final thoughts on the show, final thoughts on this matchup and what you're expecting out of this game, John.
0-0 and a penalty shootout. No, I'm just kidding.
Dane St. Clair getting in the heads of all the Galaxy penalty kick takers.
Dane St. Clair bringing props to a penalty shootout like he's Carrot Top. Just absolutely.
Is he going to pull out magic tricks, though?
Yeah.
Like who was that last year in Leagues Cup? One of the goalkeepers did that, I believe. Wasn't it?
Magic tricks?
Wasn't there a goalkeeper who tried to distract one of the teams from Mexico, tried to distract one of the penalty kick takers and penalty kicks?
That's a great idea.
Magic? Like, or we're like,
I don't know. He did something. There was something that everybody's like, what is this guy doing before penalty kicks started? It's like Dane St. Clair walking around mowing the lawn. I don't know.
I want, if it's penalty shootout, I want St. Clair to like pull out a Mexican wrestling mask and put it on. And, if he can do like make the ball appear behind the penalty taker's ear, like that'll put you off. How did this happen? What's going on? This is exactly what I want to happen. Let's get it out there in the world, and then maybe this can happen.
I think I do want to remind ourselves too, like, we can go at him offensively. I don't think it's like all offense versus defense. I think it's our defense plays well. We get to have our offensive players also get after them, because I think we've got some good offensive side where they get stretched if they don't solve, going forward very easily. So I think I see really good series for Lode, for Yeboah, for Bongi. Even Hassani driving up the middle, maybe like on a late run or two. So obviously Joseph getting forward, I see every game. So again, for me, it's interesting because I do see some offensive potential if we have good defense in this game.
Yeah. By the way, had to look it up because I felt like I was going crazy. It was Guzman, the goalkeeper for Tigres. He did the pulling the string out of his nose trick in goal against Vancouver last year.
Yes.
Amazing.
That's what we need.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
This is Dane St. Clair. This is amateur hour. Just, taking the water bottle out the field, pull a string out of your nose. Now this is what I'm talking about.
If he pulls the dove out of his goalkeeper sleeve and just lets it go in the middle of the game before penalty kicks, that throws everybody off. That's a for sure. You're keeping a clean sheet on the penalty kicks.
I would love if the announcer's like, okay, PK shootout, and you get a magic show.
It's everything.
Everything.
Commentary on the magic trick from the radio broadcast or the TV broadcast will be amazing.
I want to see that social media video of you guys in the radio booth commentating on, oh, he pulled a chair out of nowhere. Why did they even let him have a cape for this penalty shootout? This is amazing.
All right, before we jump in or dive into too deep into Magic Hour with Jon, and Manny here on the Let's Just Talk About Everything Matchday Preview podcast. Looking forward to another exciting round of playoff games this weekend. LAFC Vancouver, 10 p.m. Central on Friday night. FC Cincinnati, New York City FC, 3 p.m. Orlando City, Charlotte, 5 p.m. Inter Miami, Atlanta United, 7 p.m. on Saturday. All those games on Saturday. Which game are you looking forward to the most, guys, as your final thoughts of the show?
I'm looking forward to that LAFC Vancouver game. I think that could be an interesting one, especially if Vancouver can get one early. Now, if LAFC gets one early, then it might be a little less interesting, but
I'm looking forward to LAFC Vancouver until it's over. and then on Saturday, the 3 o'clock game till it's over, and then the 5 o'clock game till it's over, and then watching the greatest player of all time, potentially, like MLS, not know what to do if he gets like bumped from the playoffs, like, which would be such an MLS situation, like where, the greatest player of all time, best year of all time, They probably on paper want them to make a pretty good run, but goes out early. Yeah. So I think that 7 o'clock game after our kind of LAFC Vancouver is probably the most exciting.
John, this is a clear sign that Manny's been hanging around with us too long. He wants the chaos.
He
He
I
wants
know.
the chaos.
We're finally having an effect on him.
Yeah. I might get a call about it, but yeah.
Manny's rooting for the chaos inside the league. Love it. Love the influence that we've had on him over the year. Match day preview. We'll certainly have more to come up with 2.5 week break at this point. By the way, other breaking news, Diego Luna wins Young Player of the Year. So congratulations, Tim. But that's our final note on the podcast. Been fun talking to you. We'll come back next week with more to talk about. International break on the way, and then LA Galaxy, Minnesota United, the weekend of November 23rd, 24th. Still finding out those dates. Keep tuned into MNUFC.com and all the social channels for updates on that as they come. We'll talk to you guys then. Thanks again to the production staff of Grace Dearson, Evan Entler, and Kyle Hayward for putting this on every week. We'll talk to you next week, Loons fans.